Hi, Brian Werger, Director of Communications and Public Relations for the United States Hockey League. I'd like to welcome you to this USHL Media Teleconference as we formally introduce the league's new president and commissioner. As everybody has seen earlier today, we announced that Bob Fallon has been named to that role. I want to give a special thank you to all the media outlets participating in this teleconference. We will begin the teleconference by opening with some remarks from our three speakers. And then, as Kara stated, we will have a question and answer session, and she has given you the appropriate instructions for such. Following today's teleconference, should you have any questions or need additional information, please feel free to contact me at the USHL office. On the call today, we have Brad Kwong, Managing Partner of the Dubuque Fighting Saints and Interim Chairman of the USHL Board of Directors. Also, Skip Prince, who has been the President and Commissioner of the USHL for the past 6 years. And last but not least, Bob Fallon, who was officially named earlier today as the new USHL President and Commissioner. To start the call, I'd like to turn it over to Brad Kwong, who will discuss this transition that the league is going through.
Thanks, Brian. And thank you all for taking part in this teleconference. As many of you are aware, the USHL is the top junior league in the United States and arguably the world. And I wanted just to say thank you to all of you who write about the great sport of hockey and those of you who have taken interest in the USHL and in helping us tell our story to the hockey world. So thank you very much. To provide you with a little history about how we got to where we are today, it's a culmination of a transition process that began last summer when Skip Prince very graciously approached our executive committee to let us know that he was not going to be our eternal commissioner and that he felt it was time for him to look to the next challenge in his professional life. The notification from Skip was a good impetus for the executive committee to really take a close look at our business and thoroughly analyze where we were and where we wanted to go. So with the benefit of time, we were able to handle this transition in what I believe is a very orderly fashion. In January, we engaged Scott Carmichael of Prodigy Sports to help us conduct a search for Skip's successor. Scott procured a fairly lengthy list and brought us some tremendous candidates. From the initial list of about 30 to 40 candidates, we narrowed it down to 4, which we interviewed in person in New York City. And from those meetings, we identified Bob Fallon as the unanimous vote amongst those who were on the selection committee. Given where we saw ourselves as the USHL, we saw that we needed a strong commissioner who could be a consensus builder and someone who could bring groups and people in the hockey world together. Whether those people would be corporate business partners, USA Hockey, the NHL, or others. We saw that our league would only get stronger if we had the support of a larger hockey community. We felt that Bob would be a great man to help us do that. We also saw a need for someone who could promote and tell the fantastic story that is the USHL. And what better person than someone who's lived and breathed the USHL as a parent, a business partner, an executive, and an advocate of our league. Bob brings a depth of experience that was really unmatched by any other candidate. And he also brings a passion for hockey in the USHL that we believe will be very instrumental in helping us reach our potential from a business perspective and as the only Tier 1 league in the U.S. So today's a passing of the torch from Skip to Bob. However, I should mention that Skip will remain on as a senior advisor to Bob and the league. So we're all very thankful that we'll continue to benefit from his wisdom and his experience as Bob gets up to speed and beyond. So with that, I'd like to pass the mic over to Skip, who will share his thoughts and introduce Bob Fallon. But before I do, on behalf of the board of directors and the owners and on behalf of all those associated with the USHL, I'd like to thank Skip for all that he's done for the league and for the sport of hockey in America. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank him personally for his counsel and friendship over the past 5 years. So thank you very much, Skip. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Brad. And obviously the sentiments go both ways. And gentlemen, thank you this morning for joining the USHL. is a historic time for us and a crossroads in a lot of ways. My sense, having spent a career in and around hockey, is that an organization's strength is never more apparent, or its weakness is never more apparent, that at a point of transition, and the USHL, in making the transition as carefully and as coherently as it has here, to me, is emblematic of a program and a league whose strengths continue to grow, and we have managed to turn ourselves, I think, from what was a very good idea to both a business and a training proposition that's unmatched anywhere in North America or the world. I can only really sit back and thank an awful lot of people. As I said once in a letter a long time ago, I feel like I drive a really interesting bus for the last 6 years, and what really has been the mark of progress has been the progress that has existed at the team level, in particular, as our member clubs have grown from being small kitchen table organizations to professional organizations that have been dedicated to service, and a league office which in turn has been representative, I think, of the very best that hockey and the American development model can offer. When I came to the league almost 6 years ago, we were 12 teams, and there were a lot of people who said that we shouldn't grow past that. We will become 17 teams this coming September, with probably 5 or 6 cities that would love to be part of the USHL within our footprint, and probably another 10 or 15 outside our footprint. And during that period of time, rather than a dilution of the game, what we've seen is stronger, better hockey, more draft choices, more scholarships to Division I institutions. We've seen an increase in the quality of virtually everything we do, from the on-ice product to the off-ice training to the educational attention that we pay our players. I can say that over those 6 years, though, I think we've all recognized that the American development model and the NCAA-based education of the premier athletes in the world to get to be the very best that they can be in both, as we've said before, we give them not only the keys to the rink, but the keys to their life at the same time. And it's still in play. We work very, very hard. Our businesses are getting better, but continue to need to improve. Our facilities continue to get better, but they need to improve. Our relationships with the NHL and with USA Hockey have never been stronger, but they need to improve. We've got a player safety initiative that is going into its 3rd year, which has made some extraordinary progress, but it needs to improve. And you'll hear that regularly. And when you do, it comes a point where you say, who has the capability and the opportunity to be able to take it to the next step? Bob Fallon is both a personal friend of long standing, someone who has been an advisor to me as we developed a relationship with CCM, which is unmatched, someone who I've known for a long time. I feel almost like a godfather to his son, the rising captain of the Yale hockey team, who was a young man with Cedar Rapids, who I've known for a long time. So he's lived it. He is it. He stands for what we stand for. I couldn't be happier. I'm privileged to have the opportunity to retain a relationship with the league going forward as a senior advisor. And so now Bob can call me at 11 o'clock at night, because I know he will be as busy as we've been over the last 6 years. So I'm looking forward to the next step. It's been a great opportunity, great privilege. In turn, I'm thanking an awful lot of people on a regular basis. But for Brad, the executive committee, the ownership that's believed in the league, and all the players that have passed through over the last 6 years, many of whom you're now beginning to see on ice everywhere, as well as in their next stages of their lives. It's been a privilege. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk or I'd like to introduce you to the person that's going to improve it all and do a lot of things for a great league, and that's Bob Fallon.
Appreciate it very much, Skip. You know, it's a real privilege to follow in the footsteps of yourself and the other people who really helped build the foundation of what I consider to be the greatest junior league in the country, and actually North America and the world, really. And as Brad had pointed out earlier, I had the privilege of being a part of this league, both as a member of the media, as a fan, as a parent, and as a sponsor partner. And I really look forward to having the opportunity to, again, build upon that foundation, build upon, what you guys have all accomplished. And it's just a real privilege to be associated with a league that stands for what it does. So, I guess I wanted to just open it up to questions, guys, because, again, this is my first day, and I don't have a lot of depth of content to jump into right away.
The floor is now open for questions. If you do have a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad at this time. Questions will be taken in order that they are received. If you're using a speakerphone, we ask that while posing your question, you pick up your handset to provide favorable sound quality. If at any time your question has been answered, you can remove yourself from the queue by pressing 1. So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad at this time. And our first question is from Mike Morelli from NHL.com. Please state your question.
Yes, Bob and Skip and everyone on the call here, thanks for taking the time to do this. Bob, first of all, congratulations and best of luck. I'm wondering, Bob, how will the past experiences you've acquired in the hockey field, I guess most specifically with Reebok, assist you, in your new journey here with the USHL?
Well, there's a lot of parallels, Mike, to be drawn between, marketing hockey equipment and hockey products for, high-performance players and what we're trying to do with the league. It's really about, making sure that, the product we put on the ice is the highest quality we can possibly put on the ice, and, what we do to service, our partners. Like when I was with Reebok CCM, the service of our partners included the United States Hockey League and their member clubs, and I really see this, chance to work for the United States Hockey League as an opportunity to expand the services that we're providing to our member clubs. And certainly, aligning, we just, did an extension with Reebok CCM that we're looking forward to digging into for the next 5 years and making sure that our players are outfitted with the very top equipment and, the very things that make them the safest environment possible for our players.
And I guess as a follow-up, Bob, I know this is, only day 2 on the job here, so to speak, in this role. But can you speak at all to the impact that the league has had in the NHL draft in recent years, and maybe how you intend to make sure the caliber of talent, the level of play, maintains that upward trend?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And for those of us who watch a lot of hockey, and I'm sure I count you among them, Mike. Look no further than what we saw last night with people like Alec Martinez and Patrick Sharp, former USHL players who, battled to win the right to play for a Stanley Cup final. Alec played at Cedar Rapids, Patrick at Thunder Bay. But, it's all about, as Skip had pointed out, the American developmental model, and we consider the USHL to be an absolutely linchpin, step in that path for developing players. I do not in any way, shape, or form disparage any other alternatives for developing hockey players. If people have other ways they want to follow the path to the NHL, more power to them. We just consider the United States Hockey League a really excellent opportunity for people to and players to look at developing not only for the NHL but potentially for college hockey before they get in the NHL as well. And it's important to note that our developmental model, Mike, is not just for players but for coaches and officials as well. As look no further than John Cooper, who's heading up the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think it was only 4 years ago he was at the helm of the Green Bay Gamblers. So we're proud of whatever we can do to develop players, officials, and coaches to get to the next level.
Thanks, Bob.
Next question is from Brian Kennedy from the Hockey News. Please state your question.
Hi, question for Bob. Team USA has always, had sort of a unique relationship with the USHL in that they don't play a full schedule. They have other games outside of it, and then there's the under-18s. I was curious as to what you saw as the future of Team USA's participation, and if you could see them becoming a sort of a full-fledged member in the traditional sense.
Yeah, and that's a subject that we're obviously going to be, talking about in great detail with our partners at USA Hockey. But, first and foremost, having the National Team Development Program as part of the USHL, we consider to be a real asset. I mean, these are obviously several of the best players from throughout the United States, and having them play in our, the nation's only Tier 1 junior league is outstanding for us and a great opportunity for the kids playing for Team USA. We know that, developing top prospects is, again, as I'd stated earlier, there's a number of different paths you can take, and having the National Team Development Program as part of our league going forward is important to us, and, we look forward to expanding upon that relationship in the future.
Thank you.
Question is from Guy Flaming from the Pipeline Show. Please state your question.
First off, a quick thank you to Skip Prince for always being willing to pick up the phone and come on our show over the last number of years. Appreciate that, Skip, and best of luck in your future endeavors. Bob, question for you. The league has expanded rapidly over the last several years. Is that something you would like to continue? And I might have a follow-up depending on your answer.
All right, Guy. Well, it's a fair question, and I will tell you that I want to be very careful as a leader of the United States Hockey League in considering expansion, or as you put, rapid expansion. Expansion comes with it a lot of potential pitfalls, which is, key to me would be the dilution of talent. And we want to be very careful because it's not about just the depth of player talent. It's the depth of coaching and officiating talent and having the right type of market that is a fit for the United States Hockey League. Under Skip's leadership, the model for what a USHL venue looks like, feels like, and presents, a game like has changed pretty dramatically. And for those of you who don't know, for example, City of Sioux Falls is in the process of putting the finishing touches on a $130 million facility where the USHL team will be the number one tenant. So in terms of expansion, Guy, it's all about examining and exploring what makes the most sense for the league in terms of maintaining our position of having Tier 1 talent for players, coaches, and officials.
I guess my follow-up then would be you addressed the not wanting to see the talent pool get watered down. Would you consider revising some of the import rules and opening it up for more Canadians per team and more Europeans per team as well?
And, again, those are all things we're going to look at. Those are part and parcel of some of the things we're discussing at the USA Hockey Annual Congress coming up later this week and at our board meeting. So those are all subject matter that we're considering.
Okay, thank you.
And Guy, let me follow up on that one with Bob. This is Skip, Guy. It's good to hear your voice. And that is that the board of directors of the USHL has it's obviously expansion, and the money that comes with expansion always is an attractive opportunity. And but you have to give credit to ownership at being very careful and very often saying no because of a conscientious concern for the standards that Bob articulated, that you need to have the right market, that you need to have the right number of players, you need to have a sponsorship relationship, you need to be able to make sure that the travel issues are addressed. So in 5 teams in 6 years, I think is not seen, at least within the league, as rapid expansion, particularly when you look at how we could have expanded if we'd accepted the invitations from people with money and cities with arenas, rather the care and attention that was being placed by the board of directors, by the executive committee, has had us made sure that we go to the right places at the right time and not before.
Question is from Jim Leitner from Telegraph Herald. Please state your question.
My question is for Brad. I know, when you guys came into the league 4 years ago, in talking to Peter Chiarelli, he said that it was a really complex process as far as getting him on board. He's a general manager of the Boston Bruins, and it was difficult for him to go through the process. It was a complicated process. How was the process in terms of hiring Bob and finding Bob and making sure that he was the right fit for the USHL?
Well, like I said, Jim, it was a fairly lengthy process. We engaged Scott Carmichael of Prodigy Sports in January of this year, and Scott has a pretty broad network amongst potential candidates that would be fitting for the job. We went through, he and I and a couple of us went through every name to assess whether or not the person was a viable candidate in the first couple of weeks. And then following from that, we had a process by which we had each of the final 10 candidates answer a selection of 7 questions, which we then went through on the phone with them over a period of about an hour per candidate. That led to the ultimate face-to-face meetings that we had in New York about a month ago, and as I said, Bob was the unanimous choice. But it was a very important position, and the ironic thing for me for all of this is that I have known Bob for 20 years as well, and would have immediately thought he'd be an ideal candidate, but I just thought he was very settled at CCM Reebok and never even considered him. It was only when we had a chance meeting in Minneapolis at a Wild game at St. Paul, and we were sitting together, that it just kind of popped in our heads that we should ask him, and that's how it all came together. Lengthy process, a lot of due diligence. Fortunately, the background check went through for Bob, which was a little bit worrisome. But I personally am very, very excited to have him on board, and I know he's going to do a great job.
And for Bob, I was going to ask too. Obviously, you're not only successful in business, but you're a USHL parent. Having Tommy go through Cedar Rapids. What did you learn about the league, or what can you tell me about how your views of the league changed having Tommy be a player in the USHL with Cedar Rapids?
Well, first and foremost, I think that the biggest thing for being what I would call a fairly typical Minnesota hockey parent, we're very proud of the Minnesota hockey model up here in high school hockey, and getting down and watching some of the tryouts, your first observation is, wow, there are great players from all over the country. And I think that the leading scorer in our league in Tom's first year was a kid from Texas. It's like, what? So I'll never forget, I was standing next to Grant Patolny. He was an assistant coach with the University of Minnesota and won a national championship with the Gophs. And he says, Bobby, as we were watching through the glass, he goes, what do you think? I said, I think more people need to see this. It's a level of play that is very, very good and very, very consistent across all teams. I'll never forget, and more people have heard me tell this story before, but when Tom went down there, he didn't play a lot for Coach Carlson for the first 8 to 10 games, and was getting his sport coat to try out up in the stands for the first 8 to 10 games. And we my wife and I had a rule that we don't call him, he calls us, and it was kind of nerve-wracking watching the stat line and realizing he wasn't playing. And he called after 2 weeks, and he was a pretty frustrated young man, and he says, I don't know what to do. Carly's not putting me in the lineup, and I don't know what to, he's all frustrated. I said, listen, it's a little bit of tough love here, son, but the guy that controls your ice time is Coach Carlson. I suggest you call him. And it's one of those things. It was kind of an evolution, Jim, that he went to that league as a boy and came out as a man. And I credit Mark and his coaching staff and for all the great players in that league for turning him into a much better hockey player, a much more complete hockey player than he was when he left Minnesota.
How much has your view of the league changed since that first time with Tommy in the USHL?
Not as much as you might think, simply because I had some exposure to it, obviously, in my role with USA Hockey Magazine and with my role with USA Hockey and everything. Because, unlike a lot of people, I had been exposed to the United States Hockey League and been to games in Waterloo and been to games in Cedar Rapids and Omaha and things before my son ever had any entertaining thoughts of playing in that league. And it's one of those things that when you go to watch the league, this is back when I think my son was a Pee Wee or Bantam. I'm thinking my son will never, ever be good enough to play in this league. I mean, they're just too big, too strong, too fast. So, having gone through the league now as a parent, I think it gives me greater appreciation for all the work done at the team level, the billet parents, just the community involvement to get behind these teams and the fan engagement. I went down a couple of weeks ago for Game 5 of the Clark Cup between Waterloo and Indiana. I was reminded of the tenor of the Waterloo crowd, and it felt good being in that building for the first time without a Cedar Rapids, sweater or jacket on, because as you know, Jim, it can get a little testy in those buildings because the fan base is extremely passionate about their club. So, in a nutshell, I think my exposure as a parent and my exposure as a partner, because obviously in my role with Reebok CCM, we had several of our sales representatives and pro reps who were calling on these players and everything constantly and servicing the teams, and it's just it's everything that pro hockey is without paying the players. It's an incredible experience, an incredible developmental model for kids.
One more question for you. You know, obviously your league champion is going dormant for next year at the Indiana Ice. How big of a priority is that for you, you know, this summer or this fall in terms of helping them get back in the league and resolving their arena issues for the following?
It is a priority, and it's actually a subject matter that we're taking on with a separate conference call this afternoon. But I think I'd probably prefer to turn that question over to Skip because he's been immersed in this subject for several months now and working very closely with Indiana's ownership and leadership on that very subject.
Hey, Jim. It's one of the things that hopefully I'll be able to help Bob with as we go forward. I mean, Indiana's issues have actually been issues not simply for several months but for several years, and really stemmed from the point at which they closed the old Pepsi Arena after the tragedy with the stands that fell in Indianapolis, and the state fair there came to the conclusion that they were not going to have outdoor stands anymore, that they were going to convert the arena into a combination of a hockey and a concert venue. So they've been wandering around. There have been several initiatives that have been frustrated with Paul Scott and the Ice trying to get something built. Slowly but surely, it's become more and more clear that there really wasn't an alternative, and of course the fact that Pan Am Plaza is now going to be demolished, historic as it is for a hotel, as part of Indianapolis's commitment to Final Fours and Super Bowls and what's going on downtown there, just made it impossible. So we're looking forward to working with Paul to focus all of the efforts on finding a place to build a venue that's USHL capable. The problems that he faces is the problem that everyone that has ever tried to build a rink or a stadium face, and that is that you need the right public-private partnership. You need to build carefully and well and in the right place, and so that's simply a question that it can't be rushed. It takes the right amount of time and the right amount of resources, and Paul looks like he's ready to apply them. So we're very much thinking that this is an opportunity to focus full attention on bringing the Indiana Ice back into the league.
Is there a time schedule for that, or a timetable at all for possibly having them come back in, or is that still up in the air?
Well, it's up in the air only because as I say, it's complex and requires a combination of elements in place. I think it's clear that there's nothing ready to start getting constructed tomorrow, and you almost need to be able to do that to be able to be ready for a year. So while you could say optimistically that you would be looking for some sort of return in 15-16, that's probably not probable. But as long as there's progress, we're committed to the market. We think it's very important and has been a very beneficial market for us. Paul has been a great partner of the league, and he's basically gone through a lot of bad times in order to be able to sustain and keep a program that, as we all saw as recently as just a week ago, was good enough to win the Clark Cup. He sent his young men to college. He sent them to the National Hockey League. They've had a good time in Indianapolis. So if we can keep the market and we can keep the ownership intact with a building for them to play in, we'll consider it a success.
Our next question is from Brian Bloodworth from WJBC Radio. Please state your question.
Yes, this is for Bob. Good afternoon, Bob. I was wondering what your thoughts are of the league expanding into the Bloomington, Illinois area.
Well, as I understand it, I haven't been to the facility yet, but as I understand it, and I followed up by reading up on some of the news releases and announcements from Bloomington. But as I understand it, the community is 100% behind it, and that the facility and the sponsorship base is behind it, and the player dispersal things that we had with our league and player drafts. It looks like they're going to be prepared to play here, come 2014-15.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Jim Nelson from Waterloo Courier. Please state your question.
Hi, Bob. My question is, you've a big emphasis on player safety over the last few years, and I know there's a movement. I've read some movement where they're trying to eliminate some hockey or eliminate fighting at the junior level. I was wondering where you stand on that, where you feel fighting fits into the league, if it does or not, and is it something down the road that might be eliminated?
You know, it's something that we're taking into consideration with our player safety initiative and having, lengthy discussions with our partners at USA Hockey. We've actually made some recommendations in recent weeks and continue to have those discussions about what to do now and in the future. It should be noted that the USHL has been working on the player safety initiative with fighting as a component of it for several years now, and that the level of fighting in our league has actually decreased pretty dramatically in recent years to the lowest amount in any junior league in North America. As far as where I stand on it personally, I think Jim, that observing Waterloo and Cedar Rapids games in the past, that Tommy Fallon was not a fighter. So, I understand in certain levels why fighting exists and why the spontaneity of our sport can create high levels of passion and the urge to defend a teammate. I think the biggest thing for me, where I stand personally, is the USHL now and in the past and going forward is about developing skills best used for the next level. And I think what we've seen across the board in the National Hockey League, American Hockey League, and other leagues is there's been a reduction in fighting because the emphasis of pugilistic skill has become less relevant to skating, shooting, passing, and everything else.
Thank you.
I just want to add a little bit to that because, as Bob suggests, he now takes on a player safety initiative that needs that we put in place. This is now the third year. It was unprecedented at the time, and frankly, was met with some level of skepticism. But I think the proof has been in the pudding over the last couple of years. That the fighting we placed in a larger context of overall player safety, and while there is no such thing as a safe fight, there are also a lot of dangerous play elements, particularly with our young men that are bigger and stronger than they've ever been, but don't necessarily have the experience to protect themselves as much as they should. One of the groups that we worked with carefully during that period of time was CCM. And Bob Fallon, to whom I was regularly addressing questions about how can we get the equipment to be safer, how can we have the helmets to make sure that they stay on, what can we do with the elbow pads and the shoulders and everything that was hard, because the dangerous play that exists is a lot more than. But there's no question we continue to have to work on it. CCM and Bob Fallon have been involved with that proposition, though, from the beginning.
Our next question is from Guy Flaming from the Pipeline Show. Please state your question.
Hi, guys. Again, it's Guy Flaming with the Pipeline Show in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Some events outside the USHL that, the World Junior A Challenge, players and coaches from the USHL partake in that, the Junior Club World Cup in Russia, the All-American Top Prospects Games. Events like that showcase for the players and for coaches as well, and teams in some cases. Are those still priorities for the USHL? Would you even like to bring back the USHL Top Prospect Game?
Skip, why don't you start on that one, and I'll pick up where you leave off.
Sure. Well, we think that every opportunity for the league to basically show its wares is important for us. The Junior A Championship, the Top Prospects Championship, going over to Russia over the last couple of years, it was really interesting watching, as you all are probably aware, the long-standing rivalry, at least in Russia, is perceived as being between Russia and Canada. But the United States team in 2 years acquitted itself so well that they became the kind of the secondary darlings of the crowds there. And the number of players who just urgently are looking for a way in is indicative of the fact that we think we have something. The prospects game was something that we actually had a little bit of an issue simply finding a timetable that worked for a combination of the college and the NHL scouts at the same time. And if you're going to take 2 days out of a player's academic life as well as out of his playing days and expose him to a game in which he might be injured. You want to make sure that it's worthwhile for him in terms of who's viewing him. And because we were having a little issue with getting that done in the proper way, we put it down until we could do it better because we thought that was appropriate. But bringing it back or bringing some format of it back is, I think, something that we would be talking about going forward. I think it's fair to say that what Bob described in his first opportunity to see the league when his boy was at the Pee-wee level is what we regularly see, is because the USHL is still an emerging league. I mean, we're really only 12 years old in our current iteration. We are following a model which has never been followed before in hockey, which is that the very top players should be going through the model that we use. We regularly surprise people. We surprise them not only in Canada and not only in Russia, but we surprise them in the East Coast and the West Coast and the South when folks come up and see that the players are bigger, faster, stronger, better trained, and more capable than they thought, because they haven't been quite sure of where you put the USHL in the context of overall development. So we see these as very important projects for us because it's another way to show who we are and what we do.
And just carrying on to that conversation, Guy, going forward, events like that I consider to be an important opportunity for our league to showcase not only our players but our brand. And one of the things we're going to try to do is to try to see if there's a way to position some of our corporate partners around these events to help fund them and to help promote them.
Okay, thank you.
Next question is from Charles O'Brien from New York Hockey Journal. Please state your question.
Congratulations on the new position. How important is it that the USHL continues to maintain events with midget hockey, especially on the East Coast with the Atlantic Challenge now in its second year going forward?
Well, I think it's important that the USHL maintain that relationship with midget hockey, but as Brad had pointed out before, that the position of president and commissioner is all about building consensus, and it's not just midget hockey, it's high school hockey, it's club hockey, whatever levels are producing players that are candidates to play in our league. I think it's very important that we celebrate and respect what they're doing, and try to make sure that we communicate what our league's all about and when the appropriate time is for their players to consider moving on to the USHL. So, to answer your question, Charles, it's like we definitely want to continue to attract the finest midget players in the country to the United States Hockey League, but we just want to make sure we do it in the appropriate manner.
Okay. And again, if you do have a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad at this time. We do have a question from Jim Leitner from the Telegraph Herald. Please state your question.
Bob, over the last few years getting to know Skip, it seemed like every time I talked to him, he was talking about ways in which the USHL could improve or ways in which the USHL could improve upon its already high standards. Looking forward to the next 2-3 years, where do you see the USHL improving upon its already high standards?
Well, it's a great question, Jim, and we've had some conversations about this. And really, one of the areas I see, and I just hold a very strong personal and professional opinion on, is player standards in terms of player conduct. I consider it, a privilege for my son to have played in this league, and I want to make sure that, when we sit across the table from parents who are looking at alternatives to put their kids in that next stage of development, I want to be able to sit, spiritually in front of those people and let them know that their kids are moving on to a league that is going to take their safety, in its highest regard, but also the fact that in moving on to the USHL, that their kids understand that it's a privilege to play in this league, and if they don't want to follow the rules and follow the protocols of our league, we've got hundreds of kids waiting in line to try to get into this league. So it's all about really just establishing and supporting the standards that have already been established in the past and building upon those to make sure that the USHL is the gold standard for a number of different categories.
Thank you.
There are no further questions at this time. Actually, we just have a question from Jim Nelson from Waterloo Courier. Please state your question.
Hi, Bob. Last one here for me. I was just wondering, with the odd number of teams, were you guys looking at realignment or some new divisions, or how is Madison and Bloomington fitting into the conferences?
Jim, that's not an area that I've actually really looked into yet, and I'd probably defer to Skip and or Brad to comment on that if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I will say, Jim, one of the issues which is ironic is because the USA hockey squad is actually split into U17 and U18 teams, and we play both of them. In fairness, it is really like we have 18 squads, and there will be weekends where it's easier for us because we will be able to play 9 games when both the U17s and the U18s are in country. There are times when one or both of them is not due to their international commitments. And so, we work very carefully with USA Hockey, but while the NTDP issue sometimes poses a scheduling problem for us because there are times, weeks in the calendar where they're committed to their international play, there are also times where they've become a real help to us because they've had the opportunity for us to have both of their teams playing in a weekend. So realignment is not something that we're looking at this year, but I think once we get to an 18-team format, which would probably be sometime in the next couple of years, at that point we probably do need to look at some realignment opportunities.
Thank you.
There are no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Kara. Brian Werger once again. I just want to thank everybody for their participation in today's teleconference. We actually had several questions come via Twitter and email, but they were covered quite well by our media members. Once again, should any media members need any additional information, please feel free to contact the USHL office. Thank everybody for their time today, and have a good day.